Yeah.
Welcome to my Kwanzaa.
Welcome to my car.
I'm burning candles.
I'm burning guns.
Welcome to my Kwanzaa.
Welcome to my car.
I'm burning candles.
And I'm burning guns.
Welcome to my Hanukkah. It would be my honor to show you how I do it. It's
Down like the Jewish.
on the menorah, rocking Deodoras, some laka, passing on that gun.
What up? It's C-Talk.
Hey,
We got a great show today.
what up? Peace, bro.
Show tonight. Man, I got to get all the house cleaning out the way. I was just had to play that cut because that's my guy, our brother, you know what I'm saying, Noah Prince.
Hey.
I mean, you definitely got the hottest verse on that song for real.
It was a good day, bro.
Hey, man, you and Verb, you and Lee Drake killed that track, man. Yeah. I just held it down, you know, but you brought in the anchor and the video is even more dope. We'll talk about that, but we gotta do some house cleaning first. This is seed talk, stuff to make your seeds walk. Hey, I got a theme song coming real soon. I'm gonna work on that tonight, man. We're gonna get it popping. Please make sure you share and comment on this episode because we're gonna talk about how white folks find safe places in black spaces, how they can do it appropriately, talk about microaggressions. We talk about allyship, what it means to be an accomplice, but also what it means to be an ally. There's a big difference in the work that we need to do. All going back to, you know what I'm saying, the brief conversation that Malcolm X had allegedly. Who knows if it really happened or if it was just Hollywood, but I'm sure it came up when the white person asked him, as a white person, what should I do? Absolutely. And there's many different ways to look at, you know, that response to that question. But I just really appreciate and admire the wisdom and intellect of Noah Prince. And we're going to get into that. But please make sure you share and you comment on this. We on YouTube, we on Facebook. So we can, mess with these algorithms, man, and make sure people are getting this word out of how to build community. And we just ain't on here talking. Of course, we're going to have conversations. There's going to be arguments. There's going to be debates sometimes. But we always going to keep it regal. You know what I'm saying? And whatnot. So make sure you're doing that. Make sure that you inbox me if you want to be on the show to promote your business. If there's something you want to talk about, make sure you inbox me. I'm going to have you on the show. Unless you're talking about something just silly, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Hula hooping and quicksand. I don't think I can make a topic out of that. But, you know, this is what we do. So, and then also, make sure that you're donating, man. Donate to Seed Talk, Cash App, $ Logic Man, Venmo, at Logic Man. We're artists and we want to get paid, you know what I'm saying? Or we would like to, you know what I'm saying? We're doing it for the community, but at the same time, your contributions would mean a lot. Noah's always been good of checking me out and then dropping me, you know, some coins, you know what I'm saying, on the cap.
I'm doing it right now for my own interview so we can keep this.
But yeah, and then inbox me if you want to purchase, you know, t-shirts like this, you know, Black on Purpose. We're gonna talk about the meaning of Black on Purpose and his contributions, you know, to it, Noah. And also we're gonna also talk about how you can get some shea butter, incense, and other of my products and whatnot. We build it. So Seed Talk, with no further ado, I want to introduce my guest for today. I call him a hip-hop savant, not only when it comes to being a hip-hop historian and, you know, just a person who admires hip-hop as a consumer, but also as an artist and as an MC. I consider him an educator. Just the work that he does with white folks in their spaces, going out of his way, you know what I'm saying, to make a difference. I consider him also a brother, a spiritual brother. You know what I'm saying? In the nation of gods and nerfs, you know what I'm saying? A lot of people say, you know, and we're going to answer that question too. Like, man,
let's get to it.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we're going to talk about that too. I mean, we're going to be on here a while. We might have to do a part two. But with no further ado, man, I want to introduce Noah Prince, my brother, my friend, fellow educator, comrade in the struggle. Let's give it up to Noah.
Oh, man. Wow, brother. I mean, I'll be watching these podcasts and to actually get the introduction is kind of cool, especially for family. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we are. We are family, man. And when we talk about family, it wouldn't be family without a Genesis story. So I know your story. But I love hearing it every time. You got something very unique. You know what I'm saying? And we gonna dive deep into it. I don't think we're gonna leave any elephant unturned in this. You know what I'm saying?
I'm safe with you, brother. You can ask. Man, let's go for it.
Yeah.
Let's have a good
I
conversation.
mean, if you just went on Bandcamp and put in Black on Purpose and listen to our catalog of songs, which I attribute a lot to Noah Prince and his co-leadership in our group. And because he was like, hey man, what we doing with all these songs? We're making some bangers. We're the greatest story never told. We're the group that everyone heard of. But if you go into Bandcamp and you put Black on Purpose and you pay attention when this man jumps on the mic, first and foremost, let me tell you something real quick about this man. All he needed was a little bit of coaching. This man, I would say about 90%, if not 95% of the raps you hear on that platform were off the top of the dome. For real. Off the top of the dome. He's spitting. And, you know, I might have to, you know, cut and, you know, get my cut on real quick and be like, hey, man, just do this right here. Slow down right here. But that's all him. You know what I'm saying? And so, but also what you'll learn is you'll hear some lines. I'm not going to give it away. Just go ahead and let's do it. You'll hear him say some stuff like, for real? Like, we be in the studio, be like, hey, bro, did that really happen? Like, yeah, actually. It's actually
why do I got F you, Adolf? Your girl ain't a 10, she ate off. I got random lines in my head right now.
Yeah. You got some bars, man. You was spitting them, man. But why don't you go ahead and tell people out there in the Seed Talk universe, like, who is Noah Prince? Where you from? Where you was born? Because you got a very unique story. You know what I'm saying? Because you weren't even born in the States, man. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's like almost every single guest that I have on Seed Talk is a migrant from somewhere else. Was born somewhere else or migrated here from another spot, you know, in the world or, you know, in the United States. So what's your Genesis story, brother?
Man. So I'm the son of David and Nadine Prince. I'm the son of a first generation American and a third generation American. My dad's family immediately escaped the Holocaust, a very small piece of it. My mom grew up in the South Side of Chicago in what's now called Back of the Yards. It's now an all Black neighborhood. It was an all Polish neighborhood. It's always been an all poor neighborhood. My mom marched actually with Dr. King in Chicago. She was a full-on anti-Vietnam demonstrator. And my dad got drafted for Vietnam and was not prepared mentally, spiritually, or physically to go on that mission. So he had the privilege of having a doctor that wrote a letter that got him out of that, so to speak. And he ended up joining the Peace Corps and meeting my mom in 1970 in Hawaii. And they spent the next 8 years traveling and doing Peace Corps work, which was largely teaching English and largely gardening and helping folks set up gardening systems in the Southeast Asian islands of Micronesia. In 1978, they were still out there and they came to Iran, or actually in 77. But in 1978, I was born in Iran. And, you know, the U.S. had been messing with Iran for a long time up until then. And that was the year that the Cultural Revolution happened. And the Shah of Iran was run out and the Ayatollah came into power. It wasn't necessarily a great time to be American Peace Corps volunteers. It was actually somewhat risky at that moment. My mom had to stay a little. I was born in the mountains of Iran in a town called Esfahan, and I was born dead. I wasn't breathing for the first 45 seconds. I got brain damage now. Maybe that explains things, but I'm in some ways I'm pretty lucky to be here. I'm pretty blessed to be here. And the war had already started, but we had to stay until I was born. So when we made it to the airport, my parents said it was a little like the Argo movie. Not that I believe in the politics of the story of the Argo movie, but if you've seen it, they're avoiding like fighting in the streets, and their taxi cab driver saved their life, they said. So, which would be my life too. they also said that Iran was their favorite place they've ever lived. And so not to believe the hype, the media puts out there. Anyway, that's where I was born. That's how I came into things. We came back to New York City where my dad's family had set up since they fled here from the Holocaust. They realized they didn't want to raise me out there. Could have been a different person. And they came out to Seattle, Washington. They saw a house they liked on Beacon Hill and they could afford it. And the real estate agent said, "Oh, no. You don't want to live in Beacon Hill. You want to live in North Seattle. That's where people like you guys live." And so, my parents did do that. They took the advice and ended up in Ballard. So they joined a very white part of Seattle, and that really formulated a lot of how I grew up too. I'll stop there, but that's just a little.
If I'm not mistaken, Ballard is a pretty predominantly Scandinavian community, right? A lot of Scandinavian immigrants.
Definitely. Then, like we're talking 19. I was born in 78 and we came there in 80. Yeah, definitely. There's even a Ballard rapper, right? The Grinch that puts it down for the town. We'll talk about hip hop later. I'm older than him. I don't know him, but it was largely Scandinavian fishermen, old ladies, bars, and motorcycle gangs, as I recall, for sure. Yeah.
So as you look back, and I don't know if you and your parents have discussed this or not, but like if you have their commentary, but I'm sure you have your commentary. As you look back, how did your parents respond to that, and how do they respond to it now? Like setting up shop, setting up camp in a predominantly white neighborhood, as opposed to Beacon Hill, which I would think had pretty much the same racial and cultural landscape in the 70s of mainly a Pacific Islander, Filipino, and Asian.
Absolutely.
What do they think about that decision now? 3 decades later?
It's a great question. I mean, I think there's a couple layers to it. One, the house. So they were attracted to the neighborhood. They still ended up through capitalism going for the deal on a house. And what I mean by that is it was a great property. They got like a double. There's some white privilege right here. I mean, you're talking about first generation Americans Jewish white Americans who escaped, whose own families were killed in the Holocaust, and yet they got a double lot in Ballard for I want to say like $30,000, bro. I want to say $30,000 for a double lot in 1979 or 1980. So that was the reason they did it. I think on that level, they probably still think that was a good move. I think part of my mission has really, it's weird. My mom was the first one that ever intervened on what I guess what I would call my unconscious racism. My mom was my first educator in disrupting it. I got adult ADD. I jump around sometimes. So
you're doing good. Go ahead.
Okay. So I remember, so I want to show you both sides of the spectrum of my parents. I want to say that on the one side, I think they were like, this is a great deal as far as a plot of land and so I think they made that move. And I think there's a lot we've learned as a family about white privilege since those days. I can come full circle to that. I'll also say that, early on, I remember my mom being the first one to intervene on me. Like I said a moment ago, I used to read these Tintin books. Tintin are comic books with a Scandinavian little white blonde detective that runs around the world with his dog Snowy, and they bust international crime syndicates. It's like fascinating stuff for an 8-year-old. I was all about it.
Yeah.
He's extremely racist, though. Like they put blackface on there. They do do Japanese people wrong. They do everybody wrong. I mean, Moors. They do everybody wrong, and I didn't realize it back then. And my mom wasn't necessarily over my shoulder looking at that book, but I took on some of the language, and one day I wrote a rap actually. I know you say sometimes you think white people should say the N-word if it's quoting scholarly things, but I'm not. Maybe I'm not misquoting you there. Pardon self if I'm wrong.
We could talk about that later, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay. For me, I'm not. So it wasn't the N-word, but it was a word similar to that, and it was in the Tintin book. And I started writing a song on that, and I taught it to my sister, and then my mom came in and heard me singing that with her and was like, what are you saying? Do you know what you're saying? And a lot of white parents, when they hear their kids confront race or think about race or question racism, they get embarrassed and they try to push it under the table, and they try to make not a big deal of it, and they teach their kids very early on that we can't talk about this and that we have to ignore it, and which leads later on to people ignoring systemic oppressions and whatnot without even meaning to sometimes, although I guess some of them do. But anyway, my mom was the one that intervened that day and explained to me why we don't use the word I just used. And she had me start reading some other books to put a different kind of idea in my head. So I said,
everybody want to know what the word was, like Negro or something.
It was jigaboo. It was jigaboo.
Okay.
And
wow.
that's what. And so I wrote a song that said, "Can you?" I didn't even know what that word meant, but the way that it was white supremacy portrayed it, I did know what it meant. And my song even went, "Can you do the jigaboo? I can do the jigaboo. Can you do the jigaboo?"
Oh, it meant it was like a dance.
Yeah, I made a dance, bro. Like my mom walked in on me teaching that to my sister. I was like 6 or 7 years old, bro. Yeah.
It's tough, man, because that's where we have some some intersection, and I'm glad that you understand that this is a safe place to have this conversation, even though we are on the net. You know what I'm saying? It's not even like we're giving you a pass. This is scholarly work that we're doing, and it's also in the forward progression of shining a light on your blind spots and finding intersection in your ignorance, because that's where we have some intersection, like the power and the magnificence. I'm using that word correctly. Now, I'm not saying, it's something that, I condone, but the magnificence of institutional racism and white supremacy is that everyone is taught to be ignorant, either to not know or intentionally ignore something. And I remember growing up, having Native American ancestry, with my great grandmother, and one side of my family, they said my grandmother said we were Blackfoot, but I think it's just because our feet were black. Well, I think we were more closer to Choctaw. And then, I have my black, family, but we were all black.
Freedmen? Were you freedmen?
No. That's a whole different story. That's a whole different episode. We were on the plantation. My great grandmother picked cotton. So that's
different story.
My family some members of our family, for whatever reason, give the King James version, the abridged version of that, and call slave owners and colonizers managers. But anyways, so I grew up watching, but as I got older, number one, I found out that Native Americans, Aboriginal people, and Black people, depending on what your family history is, are all the same people. That's number one. Number
Indigenous two, melanated people.
Right. Number two is I had the same experience. Number one, when I was rooting for the Dukes of Hazzard. I was rooting for those guys. I wanted them to get away from Boss Hogg. And it wasn't until I got older, I'm like, God, that's the magnificence of white supremacy. They had a Confederate flag on the top of their car the whole time. Number two, and this is just two of it. I went my whole life being, just fascinated with the Lone Ranger. While this man walked around and called his Native American partner Tonto. As I got older and I learned Spanish, that means stupid. So it's like, and then let's talk about Dr. Seuss. Those books were just, God dang. Dr. Seuss books were bad, man.
Theodore Wurzel, real name, Dr. Seuss.
They were really bad, man. It was bad, man. Like, they definitely planted some seeds. And so that had to make some adjustments and some modifications when I had children. That's why we did not allow any affirmative action for any white cultural heroes, programming in our house, the images on the wall, because they were going to learn it when they got outside the house. What I'm saying? And our job was to be, number one is to be, just strong competitors of white supremacy. So I ask you this question: why do you think your mom made it such a priority, and why was that a part of her value system to check her white son?
Or why did she even march with Dr. King when she grew up in a racist, poor white family in the South Side of Chicago? That's a good question. She grew up in a home full of abuse on many different levels, and she had an older brother who is my Uncle Roger, who really showed her a lot of love, and I think taught her how to stand up for herself and how to make connections with others and how to have feelings in the world. And I do believe that mixed with whatever, divinity is in her, came together to really give her the vision that she can stand up. One of her favorite quotes that she's latched onto, she's told me since a teenager, was when one person stands up for justice, they make it easier for others to do the same. And I just think she got a latch on somewhere in there. I don't think, I think she has a lot. I mean, I think we still grew up in a very white, so full circle to your question. And I think we still grew up in a very white environment. So I think a lot of my progression as a family, like I think my family, like my mom is originally Lutheran and my dad is Jewish. And my mom came over really through my dad into Judaism through the marriage. But across, back then people didn't marry across religion. They had a real class consciousness. They had a real anti-war consciousness. I'll be honest. I think my parents probably were more like Captain Humanitarian rather than like necessarily raising us fully on like racial equity and justice, which is where my journey took it further. But they gave me the proper foundation that was not capitalist, that was not white male dominated, that brought as a young boy to be nurturing and to be strong. Like they gave me the proper recipe in a lot of ways. They just didn't know any better, I think, especially, I don't think they knew better on certain levels.
Well, when we look at, thank you for that, man, and being courageous and sharing her story, what I'm saying? That's what it's all about. Mm-hmm. In education, we call that scaffolding. And what I mean by that is your parents had to start somewhere. And as white folks, what I'm saying, with privilege. And that's a good starting place to shine some light on your privileges, but also shine your some light on your blind spots when you have a race, just in general. Being a humanitarian is kind of like something I see as like Buddhist adjacent. So it's like it makes you look at the world in a very humble way, in a very meek way. Meek doesn't mean weak. Those are two separate words. Look them up. I'm dropping breadcrumbs now. Yeah, but that's a very good starting point to scaffold from, to build rungs from that. It's like, I wonder what else exists. Like if we are fighting back against white people that, that look like us, that we don't agree with, and we become the target of certain things that aren't cool. I wonder how people feel who aren't able-bodied. I wonder how people feel who are a different skin color and different facial features. You know what I'm saying? So, which is really interesting, because I think that when we talk about white folks, I think it's in your nature to do three things, and we talked about this a lot. I think it's innate, and this is why I don't really trip on white folks after I've done such intense scholarly work, is because it's in your nature to preserve yourself. When you look at yourself and say, I'm 8 to 10% of the world's population, it makes sense that you will create miscegenation laws. Like, it's to preserve your race. We get it. We all do that. That's normal. But, to go out of your way and create a eugenics movement and to end it. So that's one option of white folks. Another option for white folks is like, just lean into it. Hey, I know what my scholarly, endeavors say. I know what history says. I know what anthropology says. It says we came from black, brown, copper ancestors, and it's my job to graft my way back. I'm going back to the original. And we see all people doing that. That's why people go back to Africa. That's why people go to places that have more ancient civilizations intact and remnants. That's
or even go back to God, the religion is just as misconstrued, but they're still trying to go back into that.
Right. That's why they go back to what is like what they call paganism, what they call Wiccans. All that is that's Yoruba, that's Ifa. Those are African spiritual systems. Those are the woke white folks. Those are the white folks that went and studied in Africa, like the Plato, the Socrates, and the Aristotle. Right. They went down and they studied in what they called the mystery schools. You know what I'm saying? They went and studied in Kemet, and they came back and said, hey, man, we learned some stuff from some darker skinned people and the technology and stuff like that. And man, let me tell you what they're doing down there. And then a lot of times they were run out. They were persecuted. They were, you know, but they also took notes too. You know what I'm saying? Because they knew they was on to something. And then so you have those white folks, you know what I'm saying, that'd be like, you know, we got to pay homage, you know, to our, you know, original mothers and fathers. Yep. And you got white folks who just stand in the middle, you know, stand in the middle. And you know, there's kind of ping pong and back and forth throughout their whole life. And in many different ways, every human being has that trilateral experience. No human being, when you really break it down, has a binary experience. Life is done and lived on a spectrum. And the reason why I brought that up is because I went to O'Day High School, all boys school, Catholic, you know what I'm saying? And you know, it's Catholic private school. And it was new to me because the priests were the teachers. And one day, I think it was during Black History Month. No, it was around Martin Luther King's birthday. My teacher in class sat on the desk, you know, to get up close and personal and very intimate, and said, I want to share something with you guys. For whatever reason, O'Day was like maybe 9 or 10% Black folks out of, you know, 500. But for whatever reason, there was more Black folks in his class than usual. Maybe this is the reason why he thought this was appropriate. So that's
he was white.
Yeah, white. Thank you for making that clarification. Thank you. Point of clarification. And he sat down and said, I want to make a confession. As we talk about Martin Luther King, he rallied in Chicago, in the south side of Chicago, where I'm from. And me and my friends, we got together and we got a bucket full of rocks and we threw rocks at Martin Luther King. And I just wanted to, you know, I feel bad for that. I regret that. I'm like, that didn't make that space any more safe for a person, you know what I'm saying, who goes to an all-boys school, Catholic, when, you know, when we know the curse of Ham, you know, it says I'm cursed and all this stuff. And it's just like, you know what I'm saying? It's like a cringe moment. And I was just like, that was one of the many times that happened. Now, we've known each other for a while. And let's just talk about the elephant in the room, because a lot of stuff has happened when we talk about the Jewish community, the religion, the race, the culture, the ethnicity. It wears many hats. It's a very biodiverse, you know what I'm saying, spiritual system or religion. And one of the things I really don't like is when people just try to like really constrict it. And a lot of the images, you know, the majority images we get are of, you know, light-skinned, beige, melanin deficient, white, you know, Jews. Even to the point, there are quite a few Jews who say, I'm not white. I'm not white. I am not white because I am not aligned with white supremacy, you know? And though I might have some passing privilege, that's what they call it, you know what I'm saying? I'm not white. I've known you for years. It's got to be over 2 decades. We've definitely known each other from a distance, and we're going to talk about how we, you know, reunited. But one of the things I've always admired about you, you've always leaned into your whiteness, be like, I'm white. Sometimes you might be like, I'm grafted. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you might use language. I'd be like, hey, man, come on, man. That's not appropriate. Let's not, you know. But why is it that you've always leaned into being white and challenging your whiteness and the kind of impact that it has on the rest of the world?
Good question. Number one, so for a few different reasons, like, yeah, I got it. I definitely started getting knowledge of self, I guess, through the Malcolm X book, through the Alex Haley Malcolm X book, reading that in high school at Garfield High School, and definitely getting the notion of thinking. I was already through my parents' roots and through my coming of age, through grunge music first, and then through hip hop second. I was already questioning systems. I was already finding creative spark, although I was often doing it through drugs to rebel rather than constructive rebellion. But I then began to get the racial awareness spark, and that was a big piece to it. So it's like, okay, there's an honorable path forward, but it's also being vulnerable and honest with oneself too. And so, in the political construct of the corporation of North America, I am white. I think in a human spectrum, in a divine spectrum, I don't think I would think it would go deeper than saying white and black if you're looking at a deep spiritual level. Don't get me wrong. I think melanated or other things are part of that. But I think the terminology white and black are at least white is somewhat of a political term, I think.
Right.
And so I say that to say, yeah. So it's all when I look at myself, when I think about myself, I think about my spiritual self and the reality that is my political body, and it's just white. That's the way it's categorized in our caste system. And so I need to, part of it is that. Part of it is Q-tips. That was my first real introduction to hip hop, really thinking how I could be a part. And it was that line, you could be black, but don't sell your soul. You could be white, but don't prep your role. And so it's like, man, you got to come as you are in this world. You got to be able to see that. And then you got to be able to connect through others. So seeing that this white skin means something, seeing that we've created a backward system off of it, knowing that spiritually and materially I come from melanated people or copper people, as I've heard you say recently, and connecting those dots. That's my mission. That's that. So, and to advance that forward, like for a long time, this, whether through education or through hip hop, I did spend a lot of time in black circles and in black community. And I did get to a place where I wanted to reach out and work with other white men so we could liberate ourselves and not uphold white supremacy and oppress others. I don't know if that can be done in America, or I don't know if America needs to move for that to happen. I don't know those two, but that's
I appreciate that, man. That's well said, man. Appreciate that. That's good. Another thing I wanted to ask you, because this stuff has come up with Kyrie Irving, and it came up with Nick Cannon, it came up with Kanye, of course, and I've been wanting to have you on the show for a long time, and I think this can be a continuation of a conversation that we have about the topic of what it is to be Jew, what it is to be Hebrew, and just, like I said, the biodiversity within that that spiritual circle, and that culture and that religion. And so, how do you practice, responsibility, like being a white Jew, when it's so diverse? And what I mean by that is, it's not a leading question. I want to give it some context. Like, how do you practice the responsibility by saying, I am not the only symbol and reflection of what it is to be Jew? Because we usually get that, Ashkenazi, like Yiddish, form of Jew. Like when we think of Jewish, we think of, DJ Vlad, or we think of Seth Rogen, what I'm saying? So how do you practice responsibility in teaching people, like, man, it's not just about me, this white Jew?
I could be better, bro. And here's what I mean by that. I don't practice the religion of Judaism. My sister does, and she does in a way I really respect. She is definitely part. There are different Jewish communities, like, to your point, just like there's different every religion. She's part of a very anti-oppressive one, and I appreciate that. I don't practice Judaism, so I just want to acknowledge that is and that's, I don't know how I feel about that. Even my own wife has encouraged me to get back into my roots sometimes, but I'm not a religious practicer per se. So connecting though to what you're saying, my family, in certain ways, I have not my immediate family, but my extended family outside of my mom and dad. Those have been some heated discussions in the past. That's one place I definitely speak up on. And if you talk to me one-on-one, like I'm going to be the person, and I say it publicly, is going to acknowledge the Black roots of humanity, that's going to acknowledge the Black roots of civilization, of religion, of medicine, of science. And so, that's just, it's straight up fact that Semite, that even means people of kind of mixed culture and melanated background. So it's even in our language, or Israel too. But I guess that's how I'm not Zionist. I speak out against Zionism. I politically support. That's not the same. So here now I'm getting all lost. So there's white Jews in America and just white Jews, period, whitening the face of Judaism worldwide. And that's a dynamic of white supremacy, even under Judaism. And that's what you're speaking to. And then there's this whole factor of Zionism too, which I'm also not aligned with, which is the state of Israel in the Middle East. I'm not saying its colonization of Palestinian land. And those two forces combined make a lot of people question, some Jewish culture and face and perspective. I think there's a lot of Jewish faces that also speak up against white Jewish faces that speak up against white supremacy and against the Jewish state. But I don't think those get traction in the media.
Right. I mean, because I strive to drop breadcrumbs and Easter eggs, every time I get on this mic when I, talk about anything, especially the Jewish religion. And I just encourage people to, get on their definitions, you know what I'm saying? And be a scholar. Like there's a difference between being a Jew, being Jewish, being Hebrew. There's Igbo Jews out of Nigeria. There are Lasha Jews.
Sorry, I didn't follow your breadcrumb. Let me speak on, and Hebrew that would be the term I would use anyway. And the originally Hebrews were absolutely melanated people. I mean, Judaism is the religion built off of the group of people. And so even that, here's where I get, for me personally, I love ISIS papers, and maybe we're gonna have to do a part 2, but I love ISIS papers. I personally love the Nation of Gods and Earths. I love a lot of Pan-African thought. I don't necessarily always click with the Black Hebrew Israelites. I don't want nothing to do with me, and that's all right. But I even can appreciate their science. My thing is I agree that white supremacy is the devil. I just can't. I'm never going to look at myself individually and live this body I'm born into, and this chance to be divine, and this chance to be civilized, and this chance to uplift humanity, and just say to myself, "Nah, I'm just the devil. I suck. I need to go be the devil." Like that don't compute with me. Like that's not even how I'm hardwired. I couldn't be I couldn't allow myself. I might act like the devil at times, but I couldn't consciously allow myself to be that if I wanted to, and I don't want to. So when people bring it to an individual perspective, like you've got to be the devil because you're this identity, like it's not going to work for me. And I still can respect the space they're coming from. I understand I'm not for every cipher, and every cipher isn't for me, but I can absolutely connect on it on the level of white supremacy is a fallacy and is a devilish way for humanity to live life. And that's not the path that I'm going to be on or educate others to be on.
Yeah. And I definitely, yeah, man, I'm gonna give you a shout out for that, man. I'm gonna give you an explosion for that. But no, yeah, and you've come a long way, man. Let's just be, I mean, full disclosure, man, transparency. You've come a long way with that, because I know, and again, full transparency, you know what I'm saying, because I think it's the responsible thing to do. I mean, you do study under the Nation of Gods and Earths, 5%er. And I am your enlightener, you know what I'm saying, and your brother. I wear many different hats, but enlightener is one, because you're an initiate in this, and you've always been responsible. I will say that, and so responsible to like a default where I had to correct you with some of your language. And it is in our nature to be certain things according to our lessons. We know that. Just like it's in my nature, according to our lessons, to be God, to be almighty, to be supreme. You know what I'm saying? But I know that collectively, sometimes our people don't live up to that. That we don't live up to our nature. So it just depends on the path you lead. You know what I'm saying? So if you're given privilege from birth, then you're given something to put others at a disadvantage if it's unearned, and you know it. So we speak to that. We speak to that unearned privilege. We speak to the being compliant, being an accomplice to white supremacy. That's devil. That's devilish men, and you will get called on it. However, that doesn't mean you are without divine purpose in this world. Everything has a divine purpose. And that's why I always encourage people, don't just study 120 and the nation of gods and earth, 5%ers. Study all the Abrahamic, religions. Study Buddhism, study Freemasonry, study it all, and just study people by being a listener, and study the Igbo. Study, those are there's Nigerian Jews. Study the Falasha, Ethiopian Jews.
Yep.
Even study Rastas. Like, to a certain extent, if you do your scholarly work, Rastas can say they're Jewish too, and they're Hebrew. They can say they're Hebrew because they're descendants of King Menelik and King Solomon, who are Jews. Study, what it is to be Ashkenazi. I know I'm probably saying that wrong. So, and
no, you're saying it right, actually. Ashkenazi, Sephardic, Ashkenazi, and those all come out of it's like the migration of humanity that came out of the Fertile Crescent, out of the Sudan, out of the Nile Valley, and just moved up into Europe and everywhere else. Well, it took with it all the different forms of religion and thought. Right.
And study the Hebrew Israelites. Study everything, because here's the deal. I take the best thing out of everything. You know what I'm saying? I take the best part. That's what I like to say. And I don't always agree with any of those people. We don't. We have two different perspectives. But the reality of it is that Jesus was a Jew, or was Hebrew. Moses, all these people, Abraham, you know what I'm saying? And there's meaning in these words. And if enslaved people were taken from Africa and they were made to be Christians and they study Christianity, if you did your scholarly work, you understand that the ancestors of Christianity are Jews or Hebrews. So there's a lot of intersection that all this does. It's a lot of it. And we are an incredibly pluralistic community as melanated people. This is something that is very, very, very new. And what I mean by this, it's very, very new to the world and the social cultural ecosystem for a group of human beings that are melanated to just study one thing. That's very new. That's like, I can only be a Jew. I gotta only go to the synagogue. No, when I went to Ghana, I seen it firsthand. My brother might be from the Akan tribe, and he might speak Twi, but he also is a Muslim, and he prays 5 times a day. And he also bear witness to like a juju, which is a lot of like voodoo, or Yoruba or Ifa, African spiritual system. It's multi dimension. So I just want to give a shout out to you, because you've always been on that. And you say that you don't really adhere to Judaism, and you're not really practicing, but that song, like it'll come out in your lyrics, welcome to my Hanukkah.
Culturally, yes, and spiritually, what I mean is, like, I'm not part of a practicing white Jewish community. So that's not an everyday. I just want to, because I have a lot of Jewish friends. I have a lot of Jewish friends that would like me to be parts of those communities. So I want to respect that. I actually think a lot of those communities do a lot more work than I do with average Jewish people to challenge white supremacy. So I just want to be humble in myself in that way. I think I reach, my work really these days, I work with a lot of white men. Honestly, a lot of them tend to be from Christian backgrounds. So anyway, I'm rambling.
Let me ask you something real quick, because I think there's a lot of people out there want to know the answer to this, and you can take your time on it. But what were you thinking? I mean, your first thoughts. What were you thinking when Kanye was saying what he was saying? Stuff came out with Kyrie, stuff that came out with Nick Cannon. Like, when these things, it seems like they pop up. Yeah, we know why they pop up, man, because it's the algorithm. It just it generates our attention, which generates ad dollars, which contributes to crass consumer capitalism. You know what I'm saying? But when it comes up, like, what do you be thinking as a white Jew, as a European Jew? You know what I'm saying?
That's a good question. And I'll differentiate those three a little bit for me. Like, I actually have a lot of respect for Kyrie. I think he's on a journey, elevating himself and getting on knowledge of self. And I absolutely respect that. I mean, I don't know. And I don't know any of these guys. Kanye got me a little bit. I think I might be at odds with it. It's one of the times that I don't know if I was at odds with a lot of my black men in my life at that moment in time as a white Jewish dude. I have to admit, I wasn't feeling his vibe. I didn't feel it. I didn't. And I recognized that he was challenging capitalism and a lot of shit, you know, in the ways he was doing it. But I don't know. To me, it wasn't. I didn't find it to be intelligent, and maybe that's my own biases.
Right. Well, okay, I can see why you would know the difference between Kyrie and Kanye, because Kanye just seemed like he was so all over the place. And I was just like, man, just stick to producing and rap, and that's what you're a genius at.
He's also
Like,
using Hitler language, bro. I mean, let's not. I mean, see,
you said he was doing what?
Kanye was dressing like a Nazi and using Hitler language. Like Kyrie wasn't doing that. You're talking about Kanye is a white supremacist. Like Kyrie is a black man on search for. I mean, and I recognize I'm probably even speaking. I don't even have the right to say what I just said, but like. To me, Kanye comes across as a white supremacist. Kyrie comes across as a man on a knowledge of self path. Like, I don't even see them things as the same. But we don't talk like that out here. I think of course, a lot of white people, period, and white Jews are just offended at Kanye, back to your original question, without ever looking at their white supremacy, without ever looking at capitalism. And, you know, so that's bullshit. And that's where I would spend more of my political power. But
I understand. I understand why you would say Kanye is a white supremacist. I would choose to look at it a different way. That's one way to look at it. I would look at it that he tries to model white supremacy in blackface. And that's what the problem happens with me. It's like, hey, man, stop. Well, no, he doesn't front. If you listen to him, he always comes back around where he's basically saying, I want to be like white men. I want the same power as them. And he said, basically what he was saying the whole time is I wish we were like Jewish people. But the whole time, people who did the intense scholarly work is saying, why is your only frame of reference for Jewish people a white melanin deficient person? If you want to be a Jewish person, there's so many examples of how you can be an honorable Jew based on someone that looks like you.
Definitely. I mean, if that's what it is, and then why is the white man that you want to be Donald Trump? I mean, there's a whole nativist thing going on with like, that's a whole different conversation. But it's like, that's wild to me. That's wild to me that's the white man that you want to emulate then.
What about Nick Cannon? And when it wasn't so much what Nick Cannon said in that interview, it was more of who he had on the show. And Professor Griff has been, he's been whiteballed for years, man. He got discharged, for lack of a better term, from Public Enemy for basically reading and spreading what he read from The Secret Relationship Between Jews and Black. Got into heavy with MC Search, who is actually a white Jew that I actually really, really admire and respect.
I think Search is an asshole. I think Pete Nice is
okay. I think whether he's lying or not, he's consistently took a stand that acknowledges his privilege. I don't know. I don't know if that's what he's like. You know what I'm saying?
He just got sober. He was a coke addict and he was a alcoholic.
No.
I mean, no, he admits that. I mean,
no arguments against the person. No, I'm just joking.
But Pete Nice, Prime Minister Pete Nice.
No, I was about to get to that. I don't know if that what that has to do with him being a businessman or being a friend. He probably is. I've heard it from a lot of people. Like, you know, he's not a good friend. He's not a good businessman. He even says that he lies. I think in one interview that I listened to from him, he was like, yeah, I did a lot of drugs and I wasn't telling the truth. So anyways, that being said, what were you thinking? What do you think? Like, what's the first thing that comes to mind when like Professor Griff gets on his soapbox and he starts spitting?
See, here's where I listen, and knowing who you reach with this is me being hella vulnerable, knowing who I could reach, like, be bare my soul. I don't know. This is where, listen. This is
you can always say I'm still thinking about it. You can. That's, you know.
I mean, I don't think Griff is saying this. I do think some folks, if there's no room, again, if there's no room for white people, or there's no room like in the equation or on the planet, like
I've never heard him say that.
I haven't either. I have not either.
What Professor Griff has gotten a lot of negative feedback for is from quoting the book and saying and reminding us the role that white European Jews had in the African Holocaust or the Moth. And that's just true. It's
Well,
just true.
true, man. Like, listen, I mean,
Yeah.
Jews were certain Jews were financiers to slavery, or the bankrollers to it. There was definitely an economic incentive, and that, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but we have to be contextual to be responsible with it. We have to also look at. I'm not excusing it. I just look at it in a scholarly approach. Like, they did what they were supposed to do because they were the group of white folks who were being persecuted. So of course they're going to be like, "Hey man, how can we sit at the table? What do we have to do?" Well, you have to join us in our.
But that's the devil. See, but that's why. That's the devil. It's like,
Exactly.
that's why it's the devil. It's like, you
Right,
gotta
right.
practice
So-
devilish if you want to be
we-
civilized.
So we make that choice every single day, right or wrong. You make that choice every single day with your privileges. I make that choice every single day when I'm in a room with certain people who have less privileges than me. Am I gonna, you know what I'm saying? You know that saying, if you can't beat them, join them. I'm like, if you can't beat them, stay away from them. Like we got to start questioning a lot of stuff that we say that pertains to social justice narratives. And if you can't beat them, join them is a terrible slogan. It's a terrible axiom. You're not look in the mirror and say that affirmation 7 times. That's terrible. You know. So I want to also.
One question I have: I don't understand why white Jews catch more ire than white conservative Christians. Like, from a lot of, I feel like, and here, correct me, I feel like sometimes from the Pan-African narrative, it's like there's an over focus on white Jews. I'm like, man, that's a small ass piece of the world right there. And I get that there are definitely ill dudes, and I get that as a collective, we got a lot of white privilege in there, but I don't understand that. I think
I have an answer for you.
Okay.
And I appreciate you being vulnerable and trusting me with this.
Yep.
It's because a lot of the times, a lot of white Jews throw in our face what they did during the civil rights movement. And they say, "Hey man, we've been really cool. Hey man, like, if you want to know what I've done for you lately, this is what we've done. We've done this, that, and the third." And it is the consistent denial that they haven't volunteered and went out of their way to sit at the table with people who don't protect our interests. And that is a smack in the face.
That's a
Like,
answer.
let me tell you what that's adjacent to.
Mm-hmm.
And I make a point to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like me with black women, knowing that I was given the baton of patriarchy and masculinity before I was even born. You know, these gender reveals and stuff like that, that's what that's doing. That's preserving a certain structure that before I'm even born, if I get out of the womb and my parents choose to make me identify with the sexual organ I was born with a penis, that, you know, I'm accepting a whole bunch of unearned privilege. Whether I'm willing to take it or not, I have to get to the age where I'd be like, I need to make a decision if I want to be an ally or an accomplice. But when black women start telling us how we beat their butts collectively, you know what I'm saying, got on their head and abused them and raped them and tried to emulate white men, and I say, not all black men.
Right.
That's what white Jews do collectively, consistently. And that, for me to do that as a black man, and I've made that mistake before, it's totally clumsy and irresponsible. Because I can walk in a room, into a room full of traumatized black women and trigger them just for me fogging up a mirror. I look like an uncle that beat them. I look like a father that raped them. I look like someone, you know what I'm saying, who they had to get, you know, domestic violence, you know, paperwork on. I have to keep that in mind, that the majority of women that I've dated throughout the years have been sexually abused by people that look like their father. That's not cool.
No.
So yeah, and you know what? It's not cool for black women to go out of their way to tell me to shut the F up and I can't say anything, but you know what? I take it. You know why? Because that's minuscule in the grand scheme of privileges that I have over a lot of, Black women. And,
that's a really good. That's a good. I definitely. I love that. Like
I get a lot of heat from other Black men, who don't see it, but I feel like they're operating adjacent to the white Jews who won't just be like, yeah, I get it. Okay, how do we move past it? Not to be dismissive, not to be insensitive, but where are we going with this? That Black men do this to you all the time. Where are we going? Keep repeating that Jews, participated in the African, Holocaust. And so I like the better answer is, instead of always bringing it up, why don't you, if you so choose to, and I can even pay you in many different ways. I can compensate you because, us Black folks, we get tired of always feeling like we always got to teach people. Can you help me be better? You know what I'm saying? Be a better person in the skin, because I can't change the skin I'm in.
Right.
And that's a lot. And we're going to get to that. And I know we're already almost an hour, but we're going to take the next 15 minutes. I want to go over some stuff and how you make it to that journey, because you have made a conscious decision to teach other white folks, specifically Black men, white men about their privilege. Pardon self. That's a terrible slip I made right there.
I'm not doing that.
Sorry, you're not doing that. But here's a question I wanted to ask you, man. And you can say at any time, you can say, man, I'm still processing that. I'm still reflecting, because I'm not here to set you up, man. You're my brother. But I can remember times where you've been in situations and you've asked me in intimacy, you know what I'm saying, and being vulnerable. Hey, man, you think it's cool for me to do this? And I always think, if you got to ask, you probably shouldn't do it. You know what I'm saying? But my thing is this. I know you've gotten it throughout the years. People have called you some pretty disparaging things. You know what I'm saying? They say that you try to be Black. They say that you try to emulate the way Black people talk, the way they walk. Talk about
I did. I made sure I went.
Okay. Go ahead.
I would say that.
Go ahead.
But I did it. I definitely went through that.
Yeah. Why?
When I first see it, so a lot of that has to do with hip hop culture. Then from me, I experienced hip hop culture before I experienced relationships with Black people and really being immersed in some of the streams of Black culture. So I obviously hip hop comes from Black culture, but what I'm saying is I listened to it as a consumer first with white boys in Ballard. Like I'm talking like 89, 88, Public Enemy, NWA, all D-Nice, BDP, all of that, and not really having any. We thought we just did it to be rebels. Really, we thought it was rebellious and cool, straight up. And by then we were dabbling with a lot of the guys I grew up with had Vietnam dads or like working class and all other class issues or family issues. And so definitely started getting into drugs and other things by then. And hip hop was part of a rebellious culture with, I guess, unconsciously Black being the ultimate cool in there or the ultimate rebel. I don't know. And we certainly emulated that. What corrected that for me was going to Garfield High School. I was part of the generation of white kids that got shipped down there in the early 90s. I was not an honor student. I was a special ed student. So I began to have a way different experience. But I began to have mostly Black classmates. And when I got out of special ed, I got into some mainstream classes. I even had Black teachers, which is, you don't even realize there's Black teachers and principals growing up in Ballard. You don't even think that's a thing. You don't even think that's I don't know. You don't even realize that that's a reality.
So let's unpack that real quick, because I want to take it step by step, because you said a lot to unpack. So I appreciate your honesty in that. You said the reason why you felt safe in Black spaces via first from a distance, hip hop culture, which is basically.
Oh no, I didn't. Okay, I'm sorry. I know. I was more speaking that. No, sorry to say. Yeah, I could answer that when I feel safe in Black culture, but what I was saying was I tried to be cool and I tried to be a a stereotype of whatever black was through rap music first. And then I actually ended up going to Garfield and interacting for the first time in my life, growing up in Seattle with black people. And that's where the second part of your question comes around, because then it's like, okay, this is a real people, this is a real culture. I'm having real peers, I'm having real relationships, I'm being treated with love. Like I got treated with a lot of love. I was scared to go. Dude, I think I might have peed my pants the first time I like walked. I thought, because everyone, you're supposed to go there and get jumped, and Rodney King, it just happens, and like you're supposed to go there and get jumped. Like they're like growing up in the North End, like you don't even know the Central District exists or any of that stuff. And then you're supposed to go get jumped. And instead it's like, I don't know, I guess back to what my parents raising me to get deeper than kind of capitalist exploitative relationships, even though we didn't go all the way anti-racist. I came like that into Garfield High School as a real person in a sense. And from there forming relationships, like, no, I'm not going to, like, I used to even put gold foil on my teeth trying to be cool. And like one, and like once I start forming real relationships, it's like, oh no, I'm not gonna, like, I guess I didn't even know the word appropriation, but I realized it wasn't appropriate to like jack move like that, you know? And so so I had to go deeper. I had to relate. And when you begin to relate with people, when you begin to be called out sometimes, or you begin to have your mind expanded, then language has a way of not becoming mimicking, but it has a way of becoming part of your journey and your true voice in it, especially if you're vulnerable and willing to be called out on your unconscious bias through that to get to a higher light. So that was my journey, you know, that began a journey from appropriation into initiation for me through relationship, Black-centered relationship, getting down to my core humanity, which white supremacy wasn't necessarily letting me experience. So it was a continuum.
Yeah, I think that what you experience is normal and it's natural in social ecosystems in America, because it's a very unique social ecosystem. There's so many places to go. I want to first start off by saying there is a difference between appropriation and assimilation. Yep. What a lot of white people do in our, well, too many white people do in our spaces is called appropriation, just based on the dynamics, the power dynamics. It's because when white folks appropriate, they are doing it not because they are seeking any kind of resources that they don't really need or have, like housing, medical care, income, education. They're doing it, you know, to mock, to be cool. You know what I'm saying? That's the difference between appropriation. Now, someone could say, well, Black folks appropriate white culture. Yeah, that's one way to look at it. But it's called, but to be more accurate, it's called assimilation. Because when we mock or act like white folks, it's literally to get resources that we wouldn't probably get if we didn't code switch. Yep. You know what I'm saying? We wouldn't get medical care. We wouldn't get an education. We wouldn't get a job, which means we wouldn't get housing, which means we wouldn't get money. We have to talk and walk a certain way and look as less intimidating as possible. So, like I said, we have to scout for this. And to really, truly scout for this and understand the reason why human beings are doing something, you have to go in it with understanding, not just to condemn and hurt someone. It has to be a loving experience. And that's one of the things that I really love about Black folks. And I'm really proud about our people, because we can do some stuff that's very, very disappointing, like when we do assimilate and things of that nature. But one of the things that is kind of a gift and a curse, we are very in loving people. And we are going to put you through the fire. It is going to be like Showtime at the Apollo for your first couple of trips on stage, unless you're just really good. Even if you're really good, we still gonna treat you like Eminem. We gonna still.
Bro, I wasn't even really good. I wasn't even.
No, but I'm just saying, really good at life, like really good at social skills. But then once you start acting like us, that's normal. Why? Number one, we're the mothers and fathers of civilization, and number two is America's number one export is culture and coolness, which is what it is to be Black. So if they're around Black people all the time, it only makes sense. If you want to be cool, you're going to act like the coolest people on the planet, and that's Black folks. Absolutely. Like, duh. it's just like getting mad at it's like the government taking free breakfast programs from the Black Panthers. Like it was cool, you know what I'm saying, to be, you know what I'm saying, giving, you know what I'm saying, and to create a socialist, you know what I'm saying, a network that, you know, provides resources to people who are less privileged. That was cool. Who taught America that? Indigenous people, Black folks. You know what I'm saying? So you were just doing what was natural. And we're gonna give you, we're gonna, you know, we talk about special ed. That's another thing that we have in common. Me and you are both special ed students. And that's a whole different episode too. But you know, in special ed, you provide accommodations, and Black folks do that a lot. We're like, okay, we're gonna talk, you know, we're gonna have our little jokes at the barbecue. Oh, Noah thinks he's Black and this and that third. But what we're gonna do, we're gonna provide that space for you to show and prove. And I can honestly say, as your friend, as your brother, you know what I'm saying, you have always shown and proved that. And if you wasn't the way you are, just a good brother, you know, always giving, then I'll probably, man, that's just, you know, that's just an act, man. He just doing. No, you're doing it because, you know what I'm saying, you really love Black folks and you want to, you want to give back. And if you were just a jerk or whatnot, I would see through it. You know what I'm saying? And the arguments that we get into and the disagreements we have so much trust embedded in us. I don't mean you'll be the first to point it out before I do. Like, you know, this is the white Jew coming out. I'm like, hey man, you know, this is how I am culturally. This is why I'm saying and doing this. I think a lot of it also has to do that because you're just a Leo. You know, you know, shout out to Leo season. We just now passed. We're in a Virgo season now. Shout out to all the Virgos, you know, out there. Especially Kiki Palmer, call me. But listen, the one thing I will say, yeah, one of the things I will say about you though, is that you've always been a loyal person and always, you know, had people's back. And you said that you were like insecure and nervous going around. I have never seen you, you know what I'm saying, just feeling like you're outside of your skin. You've always had all that heart, you know what I'm saying, and courage, you know.
Well, it's been 30 years since like really going on a quest and a journey that brought me out of just a white bubble, and that started at Garfield. But I'm 45, you know, so it's not like it's an overnight thing. It's like there's shoot, I don't know, 20 more years, I'll probably even be more comfortable and even a better teacher to white people to liberate themselves and do away with white supremacy. But it definitely is everyday practice. It's choosing people like you, to asking to be in your life, asking you to be in my life. It's, you know, you have to reinforce that every day. I do think unless you choose to do that, you can't fully get beneath this white shit as a white person in America. I don't know how else you could do it. I really don't. They call that radicalism. I like what you said, though. I like how you said it. Or assimilation, I usually give a negative context to, but that's because I'm thinking of it, the white supremacy and people assimilating white supremacy. But the idea of someone with white skin born into a white supremacy system initiating themselves around melanated people and being invited to do so as long as you're being accountable. That's a different way to think about assimilation. I think a lot of white folks are denying ourselves opportunities to learn and grow as human beings.
Because I think they don't know how to do it. And this is a great pivot into the work that you do. And I want to ask, so we can make that transition responsibly, like, how do you know how to be appropriate and not be appropriating? How do you know how to be responsible when let's just talk about the other elephant in the room. You're in an interracial marriage. You're married, you know, to a Black woman, and you're a father, you know, to a Black child. You know what I'm saying? And it's powerful. Yeah, and you do the work. I've seen you with, you know what I'm saying, your daughter, you know, and whatnot. So it's not just like, this is not just an act, but there are still, like, it's like you're always on the job being a white man, even more so being a white woman. It's different. Just like I'm always on the job when I get around Black women. When I get around able-bodied people, when I get around people who are immigrants, I'm always on the job as exactly people in the LGBTQIA plus community. I'm always on my job as an educator. Like, am I being appropriate? You know what I'm saying? So how do you know when you're being inappropriate or irresponsible in those spaces? Because you take a big risk because you're there.
I definitely lost some friendships early on because I wasn't good at I was not good at intent and impact. And I had to learn, I don't think, as a man, I had to learn how to process deep emotions and not go down into a guilt place when I'm looking at my impact, but to step into that responsibility, so to speak. And it takes a lot of love through yourself, and it takes a lot of positive relationships to really, really, for me, step into that spot. So I say that to say, I'm blessed to have people that will speak truth to me when things are not correct, when things are not coming with balance, when things are not coming with right and exact. I'm blessed to have people that will have conversation with me. At this stage in my life, I know health is a big piece to understand the spiritual cues. So kind of like you, I do strive to eat right with my body. I strive to exercise. I've really been putting down that bottle since the first of this year, really taking a step back for the first time in probably decades, bro. And that's kind of on the personal tip, so that I am disciplined enough. You have to be disciplined if you're going to. You can't. You have to be disciplined.
But how do you know, though? How do you know when you're not being appropriate, when you're trying to like immerse yourself and do the right thing and doing the work you do? Because this is your job. Like, talk about a little bit what you do, as your profession, and then maybe that can create some pathways to, unpacking that question I gave you. Like, talk a little bit about what you do.
So for at least the last 12 years now, really been in a spot of working with white men in the business world, unpacking white privilege, male privilege, some of those issues, some of those unearned privileges you were mentioning earlier, and what happens when they come together, so that you are almost super alien amongst humans, super alien cocoon privilege, like barely human in a sense, if you think about it. Like, how do you get all that off of you? Why would you even get all that off of you? How do you deal with the fear of getting all that off of you? And how do you deal with the practice of stepping into relationships, particularly melanated people and women, in a way where you're learning how to be humble? Your confidence is coming through your practice, even as you mess up. It's like the mentality that you're not losing. It's just that there's either winning or learning, and you're stepping into human relationships. Winning meaning you have a good relationship, learning meaning you messed up and you got to practice that a little harder. It's those types of mechanics that I really help white men do, so that we can step into a different framework for the world and with others. And some of the white dudes, some of it's generational. A lot of younger white dudes that do grow up in hip hop, they really are looking for ways to practice collectively interrupting stuff and still get better themselves. And some of the other folks, maybe they messed up and they're like, I'm helping them. I'm almost like their IEP. It's like, look, man.
You mentioned that about, sorry to cut you off. You mentioned that about the younger people who are aligned with hip hop and have a more of a familiar, relationship with hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think about, that's the reason why the power structures and the powers that be, the industry, that they make a point to really dilute pop culture, pop media, mainstream hip hop, because they know, like, once people align with like the really, really consciousness and awareness that hip hop brings, to privilege, to white supremacy, it's like, then people are going to be like, man, we got to have as many Sexy Reds and Sukianas as possible. And don't get me wrong, there is all the kind of room for sex work, rap, promiscuity in hip hop, but there has to be a balance. And it makes me think about even more, I'm confident that's the reason why, you know, pop culture, mainstream hip hop is so watered down and so myopic. You know what I'm saying? Because if you start teaching people from that mainstream and people start putting that stuff in their canteen, oh my Lord.
Listen, even when I told you in the late 80s, I was just listening to who I said we were listening to. BDP, Public Enemy, NWA, like that. Yeah, exactly to your point. I don't know that I would have necessarily. I think that was a huge part. I think white kids actually I don't know. Actually, that's not true. I think white kids these days have even more access to rebel against things in a constructive way. And cut that out. Off track. Cut it out, bro. I'm out. I'm done.
No, it's all good. Let's go ahead and we're gonna wrap up because we're gonna have to do a part 2 and whatnot on this, man. It's been really dope, you know, talking to you and whatnot. But before we get to the plan of action, real quick, I just wanted to, you know, say, like, what is it like doing the work that you do with white men? Like feeling like, you know, you have like this responsibility, you know, like how stressful is it? You know,
I'm thankful.
Okay.
I'm thankful. I feel really purpose filled. I didn't love myself for a long time enough to work with white men in a constructive way. I didn't love myself to be accountable in a relationship with a woman, period, for quite some time. I feel really grateful. I feel really grateful. I learn a lot. I'm definitely, as cliche as it sounds, like I definitely understand, like the older I, what do they say? The older I get, the less I know. I don't mean to berate myself, but there's a sense of humility, like just, man, I'm at play with the world so much more than I used to be. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay relearning. I'm okay learning how to set up my own business. I've become a businessman over the years. I've completely worked for myself now for a year. I'm okay with that kind of stuff. I'm thankful, man. I'm thankful for the small things. I love exercising every day. I love gardening. I love being in service to people. I love seeing confidence built up in my daughter. I love creating the space where my brilliant Black wife, who isn't necessarily a playful person by nature, can feel relaxed enough to play at home and laugh. Like stuff like that is like, it's scripture for me, bro. I love it.
Right. Thank you for that, man. You know what we do here on Seed Talk? We do a plan of action, and after each show, we take everything that we've learned and we just kind of like, you know, provide a little bit of efficiency and what did you learn and what's the plan of action, what's the homework. And I will say this, man. I'll go first. You know what I'm saying? I will say what's always going to be your saving grace, Noah, is that you're a good person, you're loving, and you're always trying to be a good person. And let me tell you another thing that you do, which is the plan of action for me. And I'm speaking to our white brothers and sisters and, you know, them and they, you know, non-binary brothers, white folks too. When people are doing this healing work that don't look like you, who are less privileged, who don't have as much power and access, know and understand, you don't have to change how you feel. Don't try to change how you feel. Just got to be at peace with it. That there are some places that you are not allowed. It's not appropriate. And you need to find it in yourself, have enough humility to ask for permission. Is it okay? If it's not okay. All right. And then sometimes you have to say, if I have to ask, then it's probably not okay for me to be there. And to say, what do you need from me? And I think that not only goes for my melanin deficient white brothers and sisters, beige brothers and sisters, whatever, with privilege. It goes to anybody who has privilege. Indeed. Sometimes don't even ask if you could be a part of it. Just say, I'm here if you need me. I am here if you need me. Let me know what I can do. So that's anyone. And the last thing I'm going to say is don't operate in a trauma Olympics, but definitely operate in a trauma triage. Always look in the room and say, who is the most vulnerable in this room? And what can I do with my privilege and my power and my strength to help them be strong?
Come on.
That'll be my plan of action. Yeah.
Come on. I heard a brilliant black gay brother colleague of mine. He says a lot of times, if you got privilege, you're taking one step, and you're moving towards justice. Recognize you took that step, and that's a giant. That's big. Also recognize if you are dealing with someone more vulnerable or marginalized, they took 1,000 steps to get to that moment. You got to have some appreciation for that. So I underscore everything you just said. That's a very bold action plan. There's a lot of self-awareness that comes from that.
That's cool, man. Hey, we're gonna have to do this again very, very soon. Like I said, it's been Seed Talk. It's been the Noah Prince story. You know what I'm saying? And I know some of y'all are new to Seed Talk, and my style is a little different. It is an interview, but first and foremost, it's a dialogue. And I already told y'all in the beginning, you know what I'm saying, and I was transparent with y'all. This is my brother, but it's not just because it's him. It's always going to be a dialogue. I don't get people on this show to do the regular, get along to get along, and debate and, throw up lobs, you know what I'm saying, so they can slam dunk them and lay them up. No, we're going to have a conversation. So I appreciate you, Noah, and I appreciate anyone who's going to comment and share this, and also get in my inbox if you want to be a part of Seed Talk. I appreciate you. Make sure that you donate, to Seed Talk, Cash App, Logic I'm in, Venmo at Logic I'm in, and inbox me if you want to purchase some t-shirts, shea butter, incense, and other products. I love y'all.
I need to re-up the shea butter too. I'll inbox you. No, this man's incense and shea butter. Like I'll say that my wife and daughter also can use.
Yeah, because white folks get ashy too, man. Don't be no fool.
Hey, I wash behind my ears. I wash behind my. I know y'all think I don't wash behind my ears and my knees. I can't speak for all my cousins, but I do that. Just so you know.
Right, man, we did it, man, and we did it without shedding a tear. You almost got me a couple of times, man. That's why I love speaking with you, man, because it's always an emotional, intelligent experience, and I love you, brother. And we out.